Hi, everybody. So excited to be here. I'm going to quickly introduce myself. My name is Kristin Corpuz. I am a freelance editor, writer, and content creator. I currently do socials for Allure magazine and CNN Underscored, and I write for publications like Elle, Birdie, Arc Digest, Billboard, and many, many others. Thank you so much to the Be Rare Foundation and Rare Global for having me today. And I'm so excited to talk to Jordynn and Sharon from INH. I'm going to quickly introduce them. Sharon Pak, the co-founder of Insert Name Here Hair, is an ingenious brand builder with a demonstrated capacity to pioneer successful startups in the digital beauty industry. Fresh out of Pepperdine University, Sharon helped launch and scale ColourPop Cosmetics, demonstrating expertise in visual branding and social media marketing while supervising the entire creative department. In 2018, Sharon left ColourPop to turn a niche market space into Insert Name Here Hair, a now multi-million-dollar business hallmarking self-expression through accessible hair extensions and accessories. And JORDYNN WYNN, the co-founder of Insert Name Here Hair, is a visionary entrepreneur whose expertise in brand building and influencer marketing has turned a niche idea into a multi-million-dollar business. Jordynn's career began at ColourPop Cosmetics, where she rose from intern to marketing director. In 2018, Jordynn and ColourPop colleague SHARON PAK joined forces to found Insert Name Here Hair, a brand that has revolutionized the way millennials and Gen Z interact with their hair extensions, accessories, and self-expression. So please help me welcome Sharon and Jordynn.
Woo! I don't know why, but it's always so weird hearing your actual bio because you're like, oh, it's me. Do I smile? Do I nod my head? What do I do?
Yes, I did do that, but also wait.
It's always so awkward.
Active listening.
Active listening.
You're not hearing it in sort of real time, but I'm so excited because we're talking to Sharon and Jordynn about building a digital first brand, because INH Hair, if you're not familiar, they are direct to consumer through their website, and they've done such a great job of building their brand on socials. And from an editorial standpoint, they've also done such a good job of working with press like me. And so we're really excited today to talk about how they were able to do that, their techniques for building a brand and building a community surrounding their brand. And so I'd love to start off with the two of you sort of explaining what your roles at INH look like right now and what your day-to-day sort of looks like.
Yeah, of course. Before we start, we just really want to say a huge thank you to Ashley and Vanya for having us on. Super exciting. And we're really excited to be the openers for Rare Day. So thank you guys so much. We get this question quite often, who does what? And I think one thing that's so beautiful about our friendship and our relationship is people dub us as Jordynn because we do a little bit of everything. We've always had crazy overlap with our roles through the 10 years that we've known each other, and we really play really well off of each other. Jordynn can kind of speak a little bit more to it, but we do a little bit of everything.
To Sharon's point, we've always overlapped, but we did realize early on that we each kind of had a different skill set. Sharon has an incredible visual eye, and so over the time, she's kind of absorbed really anything visual. So currently she oversees digital and physical product. So that means like the ponytails, as well as our website, anything creative. She obviously is super hands-on with the marketing side as well. And then I oversee all marketing, influencer marketing, and press. But like she said, we do everything essentially in collaboration, and it's such an amazing partnership because we can constantly be brainstorming back and forth as far as like, hey, I'm doing this today. What do you think? Or things like that. But yeah, that's kind of what we both do at INH.
Amazing. And I think that a great thing that the two of you have been able to build is like this community, right? Where you're being so well supported by influencers, by, brands as big as Disney. And so can you talk to me a little bit about how those collaborations came to be and sort of how you've been able to get your product into the hands of major influencers like Desi Perkins and Makeup Shayla and people like that?
Sure. Yeah, I think Sharon and I were really fortunate because when we first got into the beauty space, it was like in 2014, 2015, when a lot of these people were really building their own channels. And so we kind of all grew up in the space together. And early on, Sharon and I really invested in making really personal relationships. I think especially because we had no corporate background, that was the only way we really knew how to go about it. So a lot of these major influencers who now have supported INH over the past few years are some of our genuine friends. Like a great example is Kathleen Lights. She's somebody that I met in the past, and now we've been friends for over 7 years, and she supports us a ton. I know, and that's just to name a few. Like, we've had so many incredible people, like you mentioned, Desi Perkins, Shayla, even Jen Im has been a huge supporter. Heart, just I could go on and on. But I think those genuine relationships early on really helped later, because people were excited to see us launch something ourselves and excited to help us grow. And I think something that we've always talked about, which I think we'll talk about later, is reciprocity, and how important it is for the influencers and the partners and the community that you're working with is viewing it as like a genuine relationship, and they're supporting you. How can you support them? And I think that really helps with the community building, especially when it comes to influencer relations.
I think that's such a good point, because I think that the word networking gets thrown around a lot. And I feel like a lot of the time, I feel like this was a big part. I went to music school, just to give you a little bit of background. And one of the big things that they always stressed in school was network, network, network. And it made people approach people as if they were going to be potential business, as opposed to friends, as opposed to people who would continue to build and grow with you, right? And I think that that's a really important point, that you've built a brand surrounded by friends, surrounded by people who want to see your success, and they also want to succeed with you, you know? So I love that you brought that up. One thing that INH is really well known for is your content, and you're all over socials, you're all over your YouTube and Instagram. I think are really great places where people see your brand very visibly. I'd love to talk to you about how you're also diversifying. Like, what are you doing in terms of content? How are you spreading across different channels, and what are other avenues that you've taken to promote your products as opposed to just socials?
I think it's really important to take an omni-channel approach when it comes to building a brand. I feel like a lot of people get really stuck on just one, like, oh, we're going to be a social media marketing brand, and just go really hard in that one bucket. But it's really important to diversify how you're reaching these people in the different buckets. So we have multiple avenues that we're constantly working on. And it's like the retention funnels, which is like, how do you build a community and then continue to build that relationship with that current customer base? And then there's influencers, there's press, there's just like so many other avenues that I feel like need focus, and a lot of people don't really give it the focus that it needs. But yeah, that's kind of our general approach. Jordynn, do you want to hop in?
Yeah, I think one thing to clarify, because maybe there's a lot of people in the audience who aren't familiar with retention, but when you're building a brand, a big part of it obviously is like acquiring customers. And so that can be through influencer marketing, like paid social media, or press. Press is a great one as well. And then once they get to your page, you want to keep them and be able to continually re-engage them. That's why you see almost every website that you land on, they're serving you email pop-ups, they're serving you text pop-ups. It's because they want to bring you into the community and they want to keep talking to you. And hopefully they're optimizing those messages to be something that you continually want to hear, so you stick around. But in addition to that, like Sharon mentioned, there are a ton of other funnels, one of them being press. Press is, I think, kind of an underrated, actually, funnel. And I remember at the very beginning, and often when I talk to founders, they're like, oh, we don't need press. And Sharon and I actually kind of thought that maybe at the beginning as well. And our other co-founder was like, no, we absolutely need press. And he ended up partnering us with like an incredible PR firm, Autumn Communications. And out the gate, it takes like a little while to kind of warm up, because it's just like any other relationship. It's a very personal relationship, as I'm sure Kristin could share. But once we got those connections warmed up and we started seeing press come out, we realized that it's an incredible like validation or credibility platform. And so it really does serve a purpose quite unique to some of these other funnels. Is there's so many new brands, especially today, that are getting launched. And I think often people are like, how legit is this? Like, can I trust them with my money? Can I trust them even with my email? And I think that press kind of gives you like a behind the scenes. They validate you that you're like a legitimate brand with a legitimate purpose. They've talked to you, they've interviewed you. And so we found that press, now we really recommend it to a lot of our partners, especially startups, because we're like, they're going to give your consumer like the confidence to actually shop with you. And so I think there's all of these different building blocks as far as funnels, and they kind of all have a slightly different purpose, but those are some of the top three: acquisition, retention, like influencer marketing, and press, I guess would be the top four that I would call out.
Yeah, definitely. And you actually just glazed over a lot of my next speaking points. So I'm taking a look at my questions right now.
Oh, no.
No, it's okay. When you talk about finding and acquiring new customers, where exactly are you looking, and how are you targeting potential customers?
Yeah. Do you want that one, Sharon, or you want me to take it?
Go for it, girl.
For acquiring new customers, there's so many ways to go about it. When we very first launched, we're self-funded, so we don't have a ton of money to be playing with, and we need to make sure that whatever money we're spending is really like we're making it back. It has a great ROI, or return on investment. And so when we first out the gate, we went with influencers because we know the impact of influencers. We knew we had these great connections where if we gifted them the product, they would post for us because they knew who we were. And so that was kind of our initial step. And that acquires, obviously it's a huge acquisition funnel, but oftentimes it doesn't work because some of the brands don't actually have the genuine relationship. So they're giving out all this product and nobody's posting it because they don't know who they are. And then I think another huge funnel that everybody's really talking about in the digital space right now for acquisition is paid social. So those are Facebook, Instagram ads, even Pinterest ads, TikTok, Snapchat, all of those things. That is a huge acquisition tool. There are like entire major departments built out around this role. Like everything you can imagine, just basically like an old school TV studio. I feel like commercials, everything. But that's a really big one for us. And it's kind of narrowing down and figuring out like which audience is resonating more with you. And I would love, Sharon, for you to kind of walk through our journey of like where we started with as far as targeting audiences until now.
Yeah, for sure. So that's so funny what Jordynn said about the performance marketing side, but I like to view Instagram and Facebook ads almost like a digital billboard. You need to go find these people. That's the way you can scale. Because how do you find these people that quickly at that scale? There's really nothing else except for Facebook and Instagram ads. So that's obviously one way. The influencer side that Jordynn mentioned earlier is another way, but also on the social side, when you naturally have really great branding and people talking about you, like when people come to your Instagram and you pull at their ethos and like build a connection with that person, they're going to want to follow you and see what you're up to and support you and like be part of the brand vision. So I think those are definitely some different ways that you could acquire people. I mean, there's a ton of other ways as well too. This space is just constantly changing, especially with just e-com becoming a thing. I mean, it's always been a thing, but I feel like it's blasted off the past year with COVID. And I think that people are getting very creative with the ways. There's also one thing that we did was we do like I remember when we were at ColourPop, I think it was like the first year, Jordynn and I were actually handing out eyeshadows on 3rd Street Promenade. And it was just like cold, just like, hey, you should try this eyeshadow out. Like, you should try this brand out. You should try this brand out. So there's multiple ways to go about it. And it all adds up in the end, is definitely one thing that I've realized over the past couple of years. Even when INH first started, Kevin, our third co-founder, he was like, we should literally go and find random people on Instagram and DM them and say like, hey, this is INH. This is what we're about. Like, you should check out our products. Here's a 15% coupon code. It's super scrappy and obviously requires a lot of work, but it worked because even till this day, we get customers and followers saying like, oh, I remember when I first found you guys, you DM'd me and sent me a personal DM and liked and commented on my content. Like, that means so much to people. So I think that's also a great way to acquire new people as well too.
Yeah. Wow. I'm pretty sure I got one of those messages.
You did?
Yeah, I'm fairly positive. I want to go back to the paid social part. And I think that one thing that you've done a lot of things very well, but I think that one thing that is inherently part of the INH brand is your brand identity on social media. And that you've like really been able to build a community that when you go to your page, you know exactly what kind of content you're getting, you know exactly what the products are going to be. You advertise the products well without it looking like I'm advertising a product. And I would really love for you to talk about how you've been able to create content that feels very authentic and what kinds of creators you're looking for when you are building up your campaigns and how exactly you've gone about crafting that very unique brand identity.
One thing that Jordynn and I have always done is we're very analytical actually, with the way that we approach content on social. We're constantly optimizing. Like, for example, we're like, oh, there's this type of look that resonates with our audience. And maybe she's like this snatched baddie look. I remember when we first started, it was a snatched baddie that our audience was really resonating with. And then after, over time, like as your audience grows, it kind of morphs a bit, right? But we're measuring every single piece of content that you're seeing on our Instagram, every single one. We're like, why did this do well? Oh, it did well because of X, X, and X. Or like, it didn't do well. Why didn't it do well? Maybe for the next time, we can optimize it by changing this little piece, because content is very fragile, where maybe one little thing kind of like throws people off, or like the caption throws people off and like affects engagement. But we are very, very thoughtful in the way that we approach content. And the people we work with, we want it to be a genuine relationship. Most of the partnerships that we've had in the past, they're people that actually love the brand and actually wear our products. For example, Leanne V, she has been an early on supporter since day one. We gifted her, she was wearing it all the time. It was on her Instagram 24/7, like without us asking for anything. She genuinely just loved the product. And that really encouraged us and inspired us to create a collaboration with her. We actually launched a ponytail named Leanne V. So having these, really picking up on being self-aware with the relationships and the connections is really important.
I also think something that was important to us when we built the brand, one of the reasons why we went into the category, which is hair pieces, is our hero category. And it's a really tough category. There weren't a ton of brands who were doing it right. And we really wanted to come in with the education aspect. And it's not the like professional education. Like Sharon and I are not hairstylists. We're just people who love beauty. We love glam. We love lifestyle. And we like to like experiment and play with our looks. And we also know the power that hair and makeup have on your confidence. And so one of the approaches that we really wanted to take with our socials and our branding was more like the girl next door, or like your older sister who's just giving you like the real and very easy to digest information. Like we weren't explaining it as a professional hairstylist, but just as a girl who was also just figuring this out as well and kind of giving you hacks. And I think that's something that has really helped us with engagement, is people know who we are. They know who's behind the brand. They know a ton of the people behind the brand, and we're talking to them in the same way that they would talk to their friend. So I think that was also a big factor.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that one thing that that I've always been impressed with INH is how you've been able to sort of cut through the noise, right? You're creating content, and yes, you do have trendy products, but I think that you have created something that is inherently evergreen, and it has a longevity that a lot of like trendy fad products don't necessarily have. So can you speak a little bit to your strategy there? Like, how are you creating, what are you thinking of when you're creating products? Like, what are you doing in a long-term sense that is allowing you to have that longevity, that it's not just a passing social fad that people are interested in for 10 seconds and then they move on to the next?
Yeah, for sure. I remember when we first launched, we launched with our Mia clip and ponytail, and we were really big on like the idea of transformation and being like super extra and like, you're a cool girl. But obviously that was a very big trend with Ariana Grande, right? But over the past couple of months, we've launched some shorter ponytail styles. Like I'm wearing the Lola right now, which is shorter, and then Jordan's wearing the Jordynn, which is a shorter, more natural looking ponytail. And one thing that we really learned and realized is like, hair is like such a taboo. Like girls don't like to talk about their hair. They don't like to talk about wearing extensions or the problems that they have with their hair. Like a lot of women deal with thinning. A lot of women deal with damaged hair because they've been coloring it a lot, or like they're dealing with like postpartum, like they just had a baby and they're losing hair, right? They don't like to talk about these things. And one thing that we've also realized over the past couple of months / year is that our product is actually a problem solution product. You have thinning hair, like put your ponytail on and this builds you confidence. We've seen so many Facebook posts and just like customer testimonials just being like, you guys changed my life. I forgot how to take care of myself. I forgot how to put my makeup on and do my hair. And your products make my life easy because I could just plop it on in 20 seconds or less.
Yeah.
Jordynn, did you want to add anything onto that?
I think, yeah, just to Sharon's point, I think originally we were like very much, we wanted to do the trend. And then we quickly realized that there's way more on this problem solution side. And even recently with the like wearing your natural curls is becoming like so popular, and everybody's really leaning into like natural texture and stylized texture. And not only are we great for thinning hair, but we realize it's also a great like protection tool. Like if you want to have your natural texture and you don't want to have to be like heat styling it or styling it at all, you can just like tie it back in a pony and clip something on. And so it really does serve multi purposes. And I think that's something that was even something that we kind of learned, to Sharon's point. Like we've been around for a little over 2 years now. It's really in the last year that we were like, no, we're not a trend product. We're actually like a problem solution product. And there's many problems that we can actually solve for.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that also from an editorial standpoint, because my background is in editorial, we are often looking, like editors are often looking for products that have that longevity, that, you know, how can we find products that people will continue buying over and over and over again? What are recommendations that we can make that aren't just something of the moment, right? And there is like a certain element of promotion that is reliant on evergreen content that isn't necessarily just all about what's happening right now. 100%. So I love that you are looking at your business in such a way that allows people to invest in something that will be a solution for them long term. I also want to talk about the community that you've built. You've talked about this, you've touched on this a bit throughout the course of the conversation, but you've really done a great job of fostering a community where people feel supported, where people feel like they can come to you with their questions. I see you always answering people in your comments. And so I just want to talk about what are the steps you've taken to really foster that community? What are the things that you've done to ensure that your customers don't just feel like customers, they feel like friends?
This is one really, really big thing for I&H. Like we want our customers to feel like they're part of the brand. Feedback is so important for us. We're constantly asking them for their input on like new launches or like things they want to see coming down the pipeline. Or if maybe there was something that we launched and they were like, well, we don't really care for it. We want to hear it and tell us why you don't care for it and how we can avoid this in the future. We're constantly surveying our audience on our website, on the product itself, our customer service, every piece of the business we're getting their feedback on, because we really do value the input of our audience, like, and our customer. Like without them, I&H wouldn't exist, right? So the feedback loop has just been a really crucial one for us, but also just like hyping them. They're such good hype girls. They're always telling us like, we love you, we support you, we want to see you grow. Like they genuinely care about I&H and feel like they're part of the journey. So just hyping them always on. We have a Facebook group called I&H Babes. It was an idea that we had a couple of years, well, in the beginning of I&H, we were thinking, how do we where do we find the community and then continue to build? Because we want them to influence each other, right? And kind of build each other's fires, because without each other, there is no such thing as community. So we decided, we should just launch a Facebook group and invite these top customers to this group and see what happens. People are sharing selfies in there 24/7. They're sharing their stash, their new hair that they've gotten, or they have questions like, hey, I've been thinking about getting this product. I would love to get your input on it. So I think the number one step to building a community is creating a safe space. Like where can they come together and actually build on each other's energies, and like where can we identify this space? So a Facebook group called I&H Babes is one thing that we've really, really been strong in like leaning in on.
Yeah, totally. And that's very apparent from, the consumer side. So I want to commend both of you on building that kind of community. I know we're running short on time, so I want to run to my last question, which is, what advice do you have for people who are starting out, whether they want to be in the beauty industry or not? What do you have? What advice can you offer for people who want to start a brand that looks up to you and the community that you've built?
I think one of the really important things, because this is probably one of our most asked questions, I get this in my DMs all the time. And I think one of the big things is get some like real world experience, like work at a startup, even if it's not a beauty startup. But I think that a lot of people think like, I want to launch a brand and I want to launch a brand right now. And the learnings that you can find working really in any kind of e-com direct to consumer business will be so invaluable to building your own business. I think that the things that Sharon and I learned over the past 7 years working at, ColourPop, we could have never, it totally set the foundation for what we're doing today. And I think it's so important to remember that nobody starts at ground zero. Everybody has to learn, and it's better to take the time to learn that than jump straight into something, because launching a brand is so hard. It is really difficult. And I think it's always very glamorized of girl boss. And of course you should follow your dreams, but there's no harm in taking the time to learn more about the space before you jump into it.
I think that my main advice would be to actually build a personality for your brand. I think when an example is when Glossier first came out, everyone was obsessed with Glossier and they wanted their brand to be like Glossier and kind of just adopted the Glossier vibes. And it just doesn't have legs and it just doesn't have longevity. So if you have a brand, give it a personality. I think Topicals and Parade are doing a really, really great job with that right now. They stick to what they believe in, and it's obviously very clear. So branding is important, number one. Number two, team. We're so grateful for our team. Everyone is just so obsessed and in love with the brand itself. And it makes it 10 times more enjoyable when you know that you share the same vision with a team who wants to see the brand succeed and do well, because they're going to put their 100% in. And so grateful, especially when you're a startup, because it's a lot of work. It's not a 9 to 5. There's going to be hours afterward. You have to obsessively be checking DMs and social, see what's trending. Those are things that you need in order. It's the type of energy that you need for a business to grow. So investing in the right team is really key. And then number three, Jordynn mentioned this earlier, but reciprocity in everything that you do with your team, with the talent that you're working with press, with hairstylists or the people in your community. It's so important. Nobody wants to be in a transactional relationship. It needs to go both ways. So just keep that in mind, because in the end, it'll all compound and it'll be tenfold,
Yeah, definitely. Thank you both so much. I have 2 questions from the audience, if you wouldn't mind answering them. The first one is, what social media platforms should you focus on when you're starting out? There's talk that Instagram and YouTube only benefits those who already have a large audience and that Facebook is outdated. So what techniques have you utilized in your social media marketing strategy?
You want to take this, Jordynn?
Yeah, I would be curious what your answer is though, but I don't know if we have time. But sidebar. So I would actually say I think Instagram is still really, really crucial. I think that Instagram is kind of like a social landing page at this point. Everybody goes and checks your social media. So I think, and it's a great place to project your voice and who you are and tell everything there is to tell about your brand in a very digestible format. So I personally think Instagram is really important. I think it's more about posting the content that you love and that's genuine to your brand versus trying to grow. I think that's where people get in a lot of trouble out the gate. So my suggestion would be to start with Instagram and then follow up with TikTok. So have an Instagram page and then try to grow on TikTok. Find viral, engaging content. You can grow much quicker on TikTok than any other platform, and it has a bunch of carryover to Instagram. I've noticed whenever anybody takes off on TikTok, their Instagram is closely behind because there's a lot of cross-pollination. And so that would be my recommendation. I also saw in the question that they said Facebook is outdated. And I think actually Facebook has a ton of opportunity. It's a little bit harder to hack, but I actually think that there's an incredible audience there who are big e-com purchasers. And so if you have the capacity, I would also definitely lean into Facebook, but it probably wouldn't be my number one just because it is a little bit harder to get going.
I think also Facebook. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I think on my end, it's important to identify who's your audience and then go find them based on whoever your audience is. Maybe they're much older, then you should start with Facebook, because an older audience is not living on Instagram, or maybe there's Gen Z, go start on TikTok. So depending on your audience and the product, I think is how you should stack your social media priority.
And from a social standpoint, Facebook groups, I think, are the one saving grace of Facebook for, I think, our generation right now, because there is such a community in Facebook groups. And you talked about this a bit with your INH Babes Facebook group. And I feel like people have been able to find community in an otherwise very dark place on Facebook. And so I think people log into Facebook specifically so they can check in on their Facebook groups. So I think that Facebook is like not as outdated as we think it is, for sure. And I will say, to the YouTube point, YouTube is searchable. And I think that's something that a lot of people forget, is that YouTube and Pinterest are both search engines. And so your content will have a much longer shelf life than on Instagram, on TikTok, where things kind of disappear and they're not searchable platforms. So a couple things to keep in mind. Another question: I'm a freshman in college and I'm interested in working in skincare and beauty. Are there tips on how to get started?
I think interning is really key. And don't be scared. I feel like I get all these people who are always like, oh, I just don't know if I'm gonna get it. And I'm like, do you know what I did? I cold DM'd all these top CEOs when I was in college. I just cold DM'd them because I was like, I want to see if they'll respond. And I got 5 people to respond. So just like put yourself out there, don't be scared, and you'll be surprised to see what comes your way.
Yeah, I think that's exactly accurate. A lot of the people on the INH team got the job from DMing Sharon and I. And it wasn't like just like a, hey, I want to work for you DM. It was like, hey, I like, this is my background. I really want to work here. I'll literally pack boxes for you. I don't care what the role is. Like, please hire me. You won't regret it. And we're like, damn, okay. So most of our team came from that, and those are like the best employees to find. So if you want something, you have to really, really work for it and be willing to take like a lower job than what you originally wanted. Because I think that's another thing that we see a lot, is people come in and they're like, I want to manage social media. And we're like, well, there's a lot of people with that kind of experience. So like, are you down to pack influencer boxes? And the people who say, yeah, have a much bigger opportunity for growth, or even customer service. I've seen in my career a ton of people who start in customer service just to get their foot in the door, and they absolutely crush it. And then they move into PD, they moved into marketing. I've seen it all. And so it's really just getting your foot in the door, working super, super hard. Like, everybody should know your name because you're the hardest worker. And then I think it really opens up a ton of doors.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also right now it's not as common, but something that I did when I first started out was I asked people out to coffee. Said, I'd love to pick your brain. I will buy you coffee. I will come wherever you are. I was living in New York at the time. And so I was like, I will like send you an Uber. I will like whatever. So that way I can just meet up with you. And I was like, any pennies that I had, I scraped them together so I could buy someone their coffee. And I think that that is really important, just establishing those relationships, because then when I pitched them later and my name showed up in their inbox, they were like, oh wait, I remember you. You like offered to buy me coffee. Even if it didn't end up happening, they just like will have that name recognition. So I think things like that they go a long way. And those DMs always go a long way, for sure. Yeah. And one final question. How do you find your own branding voice in such a saturated market, since a lot of people have similar tastes?
That's an interesting question. I think it's important for you to remember that there is a lot of noise. So figuring out how you could be different and what makes, like, why would they choose you over the other brands if everyone looks the same and if the products are somewhat similar. So I think it's really important to differentiate yourself visually, but also in like the tone and copy. How are you speaking to your audience? Like, what does that look like? I lean into all those other different ways. And then also just, I think it's also really important that brands are taking a stance. I remember a couple of years back, it was very inappropriate, not inappropriate, but brands were very apolitical, and it was the polite thing to do. But I think over the past couple of months, last year, it's really important to take a stance, and like, people want to support brands that their values are aligned on. So I think that's also a great way to kind of differentiate yourself as well.
I think that a lot of people want to know who they're supporting as far as like where their dollars are going. And so I think a big part of that, to Sharon's point, is like showing what you stand for as a brand. And I think leaning into the things that you like. I think if you're being really true to yourself and your own branding, it really shouldn't look like anyone else's stuff, because maybe you're inspired by them, but like, it should always be your own version. And I think, to Sharon's point that she mentioned earlier with the Glossier example, is for a while, everybody was launching brands that looked like Glossier. And maybe like people liked how Glossier looked, but nobody wants just all their brands to look like that. It's so boring. And so I think that it's being genuine to who you are and not getting caught up in what you think is cool, because you can make your own trend, like you can make your own vibe. And that's something that Sharon's actually really, really good at, is she's like, I think we should do this. And like, I haven't seen it anywhere, and that's why I want to do it. And so I think like finding things like that are really critical. And then, and a big part of the brand voice is actually having a voice that makes you an independent brand.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you both so much. And thank you again to Ashley and Vanya for having us all today. I believe everyone's handles are in the screen somewhere. So please go give Jordynn and Sharon and INH a follow. And thank you both so much again for having this conversation today, and enjoy the rest of a rare day.
Yes, thank you for hosting us, Kristin. You're incredible. Everybody be sure to give Kristin a follow as well. Her feed is like chef's kiss. Yeah, it is so good. I saw it in the email. I think I followed you from the wrong Instagram because I was on my computer, but I was like, what? This girl is like a creator.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. But thank you everyone so much, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye guys.
Bye guys.